Hello, everyone, and welcome to Alexa and Friends. My name is Jeff Blankenberg, and like we do every week, we bring in somebody interesting from the world of voice, from the world of Alexa, and we talk with them about what they're working on, what the future looks like. And today, I have the special honor of inviting Sarah Andrew Wilson, who's one of our Alexa champions, here to chat about a number of things. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I am too. So we haven't actually really gotten a lot of opportunities to meet or talk before, although I think we've probably shared some emails back and forth at times.
Yeah.
So you were just recently nominated and accepted as an Alexa champion, right?
That's right. About a year ago, I was.
Yeah. Very, very good. And we'll dig into how and why and all of that stuff here in a little bit. But one of the things that I do on this show as we start is I have a couple of kind of silly questions that I like to ask my guests as we start. And so I'm going to start with that. And then I'd love to get into kind of what your history is, because I think you have a very interesting history in getting into voice, and it's not been very traditional from what I can tell. So I'd love to dive into that too. So my first question for you is, I'm assuming maybe you've seen some of the superhero movies that have been out lately. You know, you've got the Marvel movies, the DC universe with Wonder Woman and Batman and all that kind of stuff. If I forced you to pick one superpower, not a superhero, but a superpower, just one, what would you pick?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm in love with Wonder Woman, and I love the truth lasso. And I don't know if that's a superpower. It's like a great tool to have, though.
It is.
Because, she forces you to tell the truth so you can really figure out what you're dealing with,
She does. So you want insight. It's not even necessarily to lasso, but you'd like almost like a mind reading. I want to know what you're really thinking versus what you're saying or doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting power. How would you use that for good?
Oh, gosh. I'm not going to get into like politics or anything like that, but just thinking about some of the turmoil in America and, in recent years. But how would I use it for good? I don't know. You could prevent, I don't know, someone's planning something that's nefarious. You could get into their mind and figure out, how you can prevent that from happening.
I like it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear how you could use it for evil. So that's why I asked how you could use it for good. And there was an interesting study. I've mentioned this many times on this show before, but there was an interesting study done where participants in this study were given the choice between invisibility or flight. It wasn't any superpower. It was only those two. And I won't let you answer because I don't want you to get caught in the gotcha behind it, which is they found that people that chose invisibility were far more prone to having a criminal history or to committing crime. And people that chose flight were often very altruistic and very giving in their communities. And it was a very interesting parallel between the two.
Yeah.
You can understand that people don't want to be invisible. Maybe they want to get away with some stuff,
Well, I've had a lot of dreams about flying, right? Almost from the viewpoint of a bird, up high. And so I'm going to say that really taps into my innocent psyche.
I like it.
Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question actually on this. Have you seen the most recent Wonder Woman movie?
Yes.
Can you clarify for me? You say you're a fan of Wonder Woman. I am as well. I loved the first one. And I was less optimistic about the second one, but it was good. Does she fly?
Does she? Oh. Huh.
Because I didn't think that Wonder Woman had the ability to fly, but I feel like in the movie
she flew. She definitely flew.
It wasn't just a big jump. It was flying. I'm not sure. I just wasn't sure if you had a perspective on that or not.
I hadn't really thought about it. Now you're making me think. So she didn't just go up and then down. She kind of went this way for a while.
Yeah. That's kind of what I think too. But would someone that can fly have an invisible jet? I don't know. I feel like that was part of her lore, was that she didn't fly, but she had this invisible jet.
Had the invisible jet. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, it's good that we're both confused on that. That's good.
I will say that movie captured the 80s beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the one good thing about the movie.
Yeah. So someone in the audience asked, what is the real difference between flying and just being able to jump really far? I suppose there's not a huge difference. But But yeah, it's interesting.
What
Okay,
is
so
interesting?
I'll let that one go. The other question I had for you, and this is a story that I like to tell. It comes with a story, I guess. What city do you live in?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. So you've walked past some skyscrapers in your day, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine you're in a big city like Washington, D.C., skyscrapers everywhere. And the place that you need to get, and maybe it's a restaurant, meeting friends, whatever, but it's 1 block over. And so you could walk all the way the length of the city block down to the corner and around and back, or you could cut through an alley that you see right in front of you. And so you're like, oh, alley it is. It's nice and safe. It's brightly lit. I'm fine. So you head down the alley, and about halfway down that alley, you notice at the other end, the direction you're heading, that a giant horse-sized duck appears. Turns the corner and just emerges at the end of that alley. On the other end, as you turn around saying, no, thank you, duck, you turn around to head the other direction only to be confronted by 100 duck-sized horses. Okay. So at either end, they look a little aggressive.
Yeah.
But you're now trapped in an alley. There's no way to go up. You're no Wonder Woman. You can't fly. So what is your choice? Which direction do you choose to confront in order to get out of this alley?
Well, you have to look at, does the horse-sized duck look mean? Or is it just hanging out? It's just kind of lost.
They're pretty aggressive looking. I think you're probably going to have a confrontation.
Okay. And then I'm going to have a confrontation then with the duck-sized horses.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? So they're both, they both have like evil intents.
Yes.
So I can't just like talk my way out of it.
No, I mean, in the same way that you could talk out of a conversation with a normal duck or horse, I think you have similar luck here.
Gosh, well, I'd probably confront the smaller ones because you could probably punt them if you had to. I would never do that with any animal lover. Like I would never. But if they're like coming after me,
well, the same way. Like I have a dog. I love dogs. But if I'm out for a walk and an aggressive dog is coming at me, I'm going to kick that dog.
Yeah.
Totally. So I'm with you. Like no intentional harm would be caused to these animals, but it would be in a way to prevent myself from being harmed more.
Yeah.
All right. So you're going for the 100 tiny horses.
Yes.
Okay.
But first I'd say, oh, look at you. You're so cute.
That's true. Could you imagine having a horse like this big? It'd be so great.
Oh, be awesome.
Like a lap horse.
A lap horse. But I don't know if I'd want 100 of them.
No.
Maybe like 1 or 2.
No. I even say that with 100 horses, just imagine going to like the park. You're hanging out with your friends. Somebody throws the Frisbee, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by 100 ducks.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of ducks.
Yeah.
100 horses seems like it would be tricky, but I feel like at that size, they're probably puntable.
Yeah.
I choose the other way. I choose the giant duck every time, but it's mostly because I want to ride it like never ending story.
You have to like figure out how to maneuver it, and if it's coming at you with its big bill, you have to like navigate that. And
yeah. Anyway, thank you for entertaining me with those 2 questions. I appreciate it.
I've never been asked that question before.
Well,
ever.
I try to bring novel experiences to life, and we're doing it here. Okay, so one of the things that I'd really like to dig into, and this is one of the things that I really like to share with my audience, because there are a lot of people in the industry of voice, in the industry of software development, that often take people and put them on pedestals, and they say, oh, she's an Alexa champion, or this person is a Microsoft MVP, or whatever. Like they must have some like amazing amount of knowledge and experience, and they've been doing this their whole lives, and man, I'll never get there, right? And so one of the things that I really like to share with people is that, in fact, lots of the people that are doing amazing things in voice, like yourself, have come from backgrounds that didn't even necessarily include that. And so where I like to get started for most people, unless you have something to tell earlier than that, is like, what did you go to college for, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So I went to college for music. I'm a flutist, and I went and got my bachelor's degree and a master's degree in flute performance.
Wow.
So, and I minored in music theory.
So I would say you're pretty good.
So I like to say I'm pretty good.
Yeah. I think that's a fair assessment. If you have a master's in flute performance, yes, I think you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, and I I think really early on, I come from a musical family. You know, I learned piano from my grandmother. It was just like music was always in my life. And so I couldn't imagine doing anything else when I went to college. So I loved music and really dove into that. And music theory and, you know, undergrad and grad school. And then for 20 years, I was a musician and an educator. I was basically in the music business for 20 years. So I was performing and I was teaching. And then I discovered kind of the administrative side of the business. And so I became a tour manager for other musicians. Wow. And I was an administrator, I was a director of music education for a community music school. So I really kind of looked at the music business from lots of different angles. What I really liked in the tail end of my career was my music career was helping other musicians in the things that they didn't want to take care of. So, you know, as a musician, you have to be practicing and you're performing, but there's all this other stuff that you have to do to manage your career. So I really enjoyed like helping musicians, using my own skills and helping musicians, you know, be the best that they could be.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you got into all of the world of music, and that led you to helping like manage tours and do a lot of that other stuff. By the way, I don't have nearly the experience or talent I'm sure that you have, but I was also in the band. I played the clarinet, so I sat near the flutes. And, played that all through high school and college.
Okay.
Was also in the men's chorus at my school, so we did a lot of like barbershop singing and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool.
Nice. You know, I think there's there's a big connection in the brain between how musicians think analytically and what you have to do to work in an ensemble and work on your own craft and what people do in tech. It's a very analytical brain.
Very much. I very much agree with that. So, okay. So there's a pivot though that gets made in this career because you somehow end up at Matchbox. So how did you get from managing the tour of musicians and helping them with their logistics and planning and everything else to Matchbox?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird transition.
It is. But there had to be an introduction or a experience or a story, like somehow that happened. So
So the founder and CEO of Matchbox is Joel Wilson, and he's also my husband.
Oh.
So he founded Matchbox in 2017, January 2017. And this is while I was director of education at a music school. And he created several Alexa skills. So it was like daily poll, 3 questions, and question of the day. And question of the day started getting some traction. And like 6 months into question of the day being live, he wanted to start adding like bonus questions and game packs and all this. But he was doing all of it. He was coding, designing, writing the content. And he realized that if he was going to go from 1 question a day with that one Alexa skill, with 1 question a day to like a question a day plus bonus questions plus a trivia club, he was going to have to like quadruple his work in writing content. Yeah. So he asked me, knowing my education background, he asked me if I'd be willing to write some content like on the weekends, you know, or sitting in front of the TV, writing some content. So I did that kind of part-time for a year. Wow. And then everything that Matchbox was doing really took off, I guess 2018. And then it came to a point where it was like, he was going to have to really start hiring people full time, none of this like part-time stuff. So I made the decision just to join.
Wow.
You know, just join full time and focus on the content so that he could focus on the kind of the development side and I would focus on basically the content.
Yeah. And so that's now your role at Matchbox, right? I saw you're the CCO.
I'm the CCO, Chief Content Officer, and we've grown so in January 2017, Matchbox was just one developer, and Matchbox now is a team of 10 folks that we have a content team that I work with. Because we've localized a lot of our skills, going into Spanish speaking locales and French speaking and Brazilian Portuguese. I now have a whole team of folks that help me localize and translate and interpret that content. And then we also have a podcast that plays at the end of Question of the Day every day on Alexa. And so we have a whole podcast team that I work with, because that's all content as well.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I'm running into this wall myself right now. So I am on my own stream, on my own Twitch, I am building a trivia game. But not just like, here's some questions, but like it's actually got gamified, like it's got achievements, and like it's a big trivia game.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who ran a pub trivia business 5-6 years ago, and he was writing a lot of his own questions because he only needed 10 every day, and so he would just write the 10 he needed. But this became a database of thousands of questions over time.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing with all those questions, man?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Right. And so I borrowed his questions, and I'm loading those into my database. But the challenge that I see in front of me is that it can't just live with the set of questions he wrote once 5 years ago. Like there's things that need to change and be added to and grow. And so as I look at that, I'm like, wow, that is an undertaking. How am I possibly going to have tons more questions on a regular basis? And if I'm going to justify people paying for content inside, like how is all that going to work? So
yes,
it's fantastic to hear a story like yours about how it kind of just organically grew like that. Like we don't need to invest a ton of money now and people and content and all that stuff. But if we see some traction, if we see it grow, we need to be ready to think about how are we going to bring people in? How are we going to build something that will allow us to bring those questions in? So that's a wonderful story to tell. I like that.
So just to add to what you were saying, like I think early on, before I started working with Matchbox, Joel had purchased like 100 trivia questions or something like that. But that makes sense. Like if you need a lot of content and you don't have any other way of getting that content, why not look at who else might have the content you have and see if you can work with them. But what we found was that content was great for like live trivia, where it's like, did I get it right? Yes. Okay, great. And you move on to the next question. But what we try to do is we see it really from an educational standpoint. So it's not just trivia. The way we've packaged it, you're also learning something. So we have factoids. And that's when we realized like the trivia or the little pack that he had bought didn't have those factoids. And some of it, as you mentioned, like kind of can become outdated. So if I had questions about like the World Cup from 2012, there's been several World Cups since then, and the stats have changed and that kind of
thing. Well, it made me think as I'm going through my questions that I really need to label them as this could potentially change. There was one that I was just testing yesterday, and the question was, how many U.S. presidents have been assassinated? Now, hopefully this number never changes and the list is final.
Right.
But there's always that possibility. And so because things could change, I need the ability to like once a year maybe go through and review the questions that could potentially change and be like, yeah, no, we've got a new person for this list or that. Not hopefully the assassination one is never one that we have to add to. But
oh gosh,
as we think about that, man, what an undertaking it is to manage and run all this content, which I'm sure you're intimately familiar with in your role.
Yeah. Well, and there's also always new like scientific discoveries. So you think like, what's the old, I don't know, like an animal that went extinct, but like recently they just discovered that animal somewhere, so yeah, it's like little things like that pop up all the time.
Right.
I'll be watching the news and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have a question about that. I have to change that now. And,
but that's only because it like happened to click in your head that you're like, I know that content exists.
Yeah.
I need to go modify it. That's my fear, is that like, I've got thousands of questions. How am I possibly going to remember all of them?
Right.
It's tricky business for sure.
It is.
All right. So let's get into that. So you guys have a few skills over there at Matchbox, including question of the day, which I see all sorts of tweets about and apps and all sorts of cool stuff you guys are doing with that.
Yeah.
So what would you say is not your most successful? I'm hoping that's not how you measure this next question, but what is your favorite skill that you guys have?
Oh, that's a good question. So we have 20 Alexa skills. So I think my absolute favorite is Kids Quiz, because that was the first one that I designed with the team from the ground up. And I loved the entire process of like starting with a total blank slate and figuring out, what is this going to look like? And oh, that won't work. Let's, maneuver it this way. And then going from that to building the content, to the beta testing, which I love beta testing, to getting feedback from the beta testers and then tweaking from that feedback, and then all of that all the way to launch. That was the first one that I had done, and it's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I can understand that. I probably, none of them are in the kind of circulation that yours are, but I probably have 20 skills as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were just experimental things that I wanted to push them out there and see how they do and whatever. And, I'm not doing any of the marketing and any of the kind of push that is necessary sometimes to really push a skill over the top. But it's fun to look back at growth too. Like, there were things that you probably did early on that you're like, no, we would handle that differently now, or we would use a different place to store our content or whatever it is. But every time I build something, I learn something new about, well, I know I did that last time, but it could be better if I solved it this way or whatever. Is there anything like that stands out to you guys? Do you have any like processes or kind of like rules for when you guys build skills?
I want to say the correct answer is, oh yes, we have all sorts of processes, but it's a little more messy than that.
Oh, yeah, of course it is.
Because we've had to grow. It's now been 4 years. We've had to grow, and as you bring in more people and they have different perspectives, and so you start putting together processes, just because otherwise it's going to get really messy if you have all these people working together without kind of a formalized process. But a lot of what we do is just patchwork.
Sure.
And as we're growing, and then eventually we're like, oh, we should probably formalize that in some way.
Yeah.
But what we do is we do go back. We just did this maybe last summer into the fall, where we went through all of our entire portfolio. And we're like, some of these were launched 3 years ago. What new tools are out there that have, that we can now incorporate into these? How can we tweak these? We refactored a lot. And so that's a big part of our process, I think. Is just because we launched a skill doesn't mean it's like out there and like, all right, we're done with that.
Right. That's something I say all the time, is that just because you launched it doesn't mean you're done. You just started.
You just started. Yeah.
Now you need to keep what is the word I'm looking for? Keep
just iterating,
nurturing it.
Nurturing. Yeah. That's a great word.
Adding content, refining things, looking at your data, seeing what intents people are using, which ones they're not. I have plenty of examples of where I thought, man, I want to focus a bunch more time on this specific bit of functionality in a skill, only to then look at my data and be like, nobody even uses that. Why would I? Why would I do that?
There's been so many times when that's happened, where we're super excited about a certain feature, and like the users are like,
Totally. So that brings me to another interesting question, though, because I generally only have the perspective of a one-man development shop. I'm doing all of my voice design. I'm doing all of my development. I'm doing all my content creation. I get how to do all of those pieces. But I think that there's a new level of complication and difficulty that's introduced when you have a team of 10 contributing to the same thing, or 20 different skills across those 10 people.
Yeah.
So can you share as much as you can, kind of what your process looks like? I mean, you have some coders working and they're sharing code across a number of places. You have people contributing to interaction models and slots and all sorts of stuff. What does that look like at Matchbox?
So what does it look like? So we have some silos, but then we also have a web. Okay. So we have folks who are only working in a certain platform. Other folks are working in other platforms, and then we figure out how to kind of mesh all of it together when the time comes. So on my end, we have a content management system that multiple people are working in to create the content and to translate the content and to tweak it. And then
I apologize for interrupting. Can you share what that is? Is it a custom tool? Is it just like a third-party CMS that you use?
It's a third party that we've kind of tweaked to make it work for us.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and then some things like our podcast team, they're totally in a silo over here. But we give them the content and we discuss the content, but then they run with it. They just do their own thing with it, So
that's cool.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to have too many silos, but because everyone has their very specific responsibilities, you do wind up having those. But then we bring it all together.
Yeah. That's excellent. Okay, so there's something I want to dig into. We talked about this only briefly before we got started here today, and that is all those lovely squares behind you.
Oh yeah.
It seems to me, now I recognize those as mixed tiles, but it's just because I apparently pay attention to ads on Facebook or something.
Yeah. But, that's where I get them from. Yeah.
Right. I don't have any of those, but there is a company called, I think it's Chatbooks or something like that. And they do something similar. It's a similarly sized book, but I go through every December 15th or so, and I go through my phone and I pick out all my favorite pictures from the year and I send them to this company. And then they give me a nice bound book that has pages and pages of all of our images from that year.
Yeah.
And so these mixed tiles remind me of that. So you said these are pictures from your world travels.
Yes.
Do you travel a lot? Or a bit like pre-COVID?
Pre-pandemic, yeah, I was traveling internationally 2 or 3 times a year, and then within the United States multiple times a year. So I was like traveling once a month pre-pandemic, and now it's been a year of just like sitting at home.
Right, I'm with you. I'm the same way. I was diamond and platinum on all of the things, and now I haven't been anywhere since last March. In fact, just last week was the 1-year anniversary of my last trip, and it was got to go to India. So it was a lovely trip, and I can't wait to go back. But it was it's been a year since I've gone anywhere at all.
I still had those travels, those planned trips on my calendar, and throughout the past year, I'd get a notification, flight to wherever, South Africa next week. I'm like, nope.
Nope.
But yes, so the mixed tiles, if you can see, they're just really special memories, like just snapshots of when I was in Vietnam and Thailand and Sri Lanka and Brazil and
excellent
New York, just a wide variety of.
Very cool. Okay, so we got a quick 1-2 question for you.
Yeah.
The first one is, what is your favorite place to visit in the United States?
Oh, in the United States, so there's like 2. I can't narrow it down because they're very different. One is just New York City. Like nothing beats New York. I every block there's like something new to discover. And then Hilton Head, which is on the other end of the spectrum of places to visit, but it's just so beautiful and peaceful. It's a beach town, and it's a gorgeous place.
Yeah, I'm actually my family vacation is not far from where you are. We go to the Outer Banks, which is just just south of Virginia. That's our.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
And I'm with you on New York City, man. My daughter and my wife are huge Broadway fans. Well, our whole family is, and so they're even like, it's the moment shows open, we're going, right? And I'm like, oh guys, like we live in Ohio. That's not an easy just jump over there, right?
Yeah.
But man, we do love a good Broadway show, and there's a hotel right in Times Square. It's called the Marriott Marquis, and it's like part of the wall of Times Square, and they just refer to that as our hotel. Like that's where we always end up staying.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to get back there. So how about for you internationally? Do you have a place that you're like, if I could go anywhere internationally, it would be back here?
So it was Sri Lanka until I went to Vietnam. And I was in Vietnam right as the pandemic hit a year ago. So I had to like truncate my visit there, and I have to go back. It is so beautiful. It is so beautiful, and the food cannot be beat. And I want to go back and dive more into the culture. And
I have a friend who's going to move there soon. He's taking a job in Vietnam, and I feel like that is a perfect reason for me to go visit.
Oh yeah, you have to. It's just, it's so beautiful. And I think Americans have like an odd perspective of Vietnam because of the war and what we've been taught about the war. And we know folks perhaps relatives that have gone through that went through the war. but you have to, if you visit, just set that aside.
Right.
And just be open to what the country is about and what their history is like. And you're going to love it when you visit.
Well, that sounds awesome. I have a map here next to me. I don't think anybody can see it. It's kind of cut off, but
yeah.
It is. Yeah, I'll do this. There we go. So I have a map.
Oh, yeah.
I have little push pins that are there for every place that I've been, and I have many more push pins to put in for sure.
So did I see one in Rio, or was that Sao Paulo?
No, it was Sao Paulo. Yeah.
Sao Paulo.
I went there twice last year, actually. Not last year, 2019. I forget that 2020 even existed. I went there twice in 2019.
Okay, yeah. Well, what was your favorite international place?
But that was when we launched Portuguese in Brazil for Alexa. So
yeah,
I had a very, very nice time. All right, so we still have some time left. One of the things that I really wanted to get into you with, as somebody that's working exclusively in the voice industry, and I would imagine you're thinking a lot about what to do next, where to go. What does the future look like to you? If we talk about, like, not next month, not even this year, but like 2025, what does 2025's voice world look like to you?
Yeah, so voice will be everywhere, even more than it is now. It'll be very popular in cars, in offices, everywhere you go, something's going to be voice enabled. I think it's very easy for those of us in the industry to see that.
Right.
So I also want to mention that what goes along with voice being everywhere is that the general public is aware of these opportunities and using voice. And I still feel like, all of us in the voice industry are like, oh my God, all these things are coming and the future is awesome and it's going to be so great. And meanwhile, the general public is way over here. And we have to remember, we have to bring them along. And
completely. I show them this, right? I have all the devices sitting here behind me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
And they're like, why do you have so many joke telling machines? Like, that's still where a lot of the public is. That maybe they bought an Echo Dot or they got one for Christmas, but they ask it for the weather once a week or whatever, and they haven't found the like deep utility in their lives.
Yeah,
they'll flip on the TV for hours and hours.
Yeah.
We just need to figure out a way to make voice as engaging as things like television, podcasts, and everything else, right?
So I recently did kind of an informal poll of friends and family, like 30 different people. And I asked them, like, how many of you are using voice just in your daily life, like smart speaker or on your phone? And a lot of people said, oh, no, I don't trust voice. So I'm like, okay, well, tell me why. They tell me like people are listening to me. And then as I dove in more, some of them admitted that they use, they use Siri to make a phone call or to do a text message. And I'm like, that's voice. That's actually, you're using voice technology.
Right.
And they're like, oh, okay. So I think a lot of people are using it, but somehow see it differently than what's happening on a smart speaker, or like they're not seeing it as more of a cohesive ability like a lot of us are. So
I think part of that comes from the fact that each device you talk to is a different assistant, right?
Yes.
So if you have a Google Home, it's one assistant. If you have an Alexa, it's a different. If you have your phone, it's Google Home or Google Assistant, or it's Siri. Like there's so many different things. They all do different stuff, and you have to set them all up independently. And like it's a whole thing. I can definitely understand how people feel that way. I have,
in not the 5-year view, but like the 25-year view, it'll come sooner. Maybe it's 5 to 10-year view. I keep going back to R2D2 and C3PO. I keep going back to this because they are.
I'm sorry. Are those characters from a
this little, lesser known movie called Star Wars?
Okay.
That they are both voice activated, right? And they're robots, of course. When you talk to, they obviously have different manufacturers. I think C3PO is a more modern version of a robot than R2. I could be wrong with that, but seems more modern. They're different manufacturers, but when you want to talk to them, you don't have to say, oh, wait, let's see, with the R2 unit, I have to say this.
Right.
And then, oh, wait, no, in order for C3PO to understand me, I have to say this. You just start talking, right? And they understand when they talk to each other.
Right.
They like inherently understand each other.
This is a wonderful analogy, by the way. I love this.
I've been thinking about it because we just rewatched, you know, all 9 movies or 10 movies. And so, yeah, so I feel like that's really ideally where all of this is going, where you don't have to remember the exact prompt.
Right.
And that the robots and machines will talk to each other much more easily, and it won't matter who manufactured what. So hopefully that's where this is all going.
I love that. That's a beautiful vision of the future. I think that's something that is desperately needed. I often talk about the democratization of data and how that will help solve a lot of this. But think of all of the things that you know, and then try to find yourself a structured list of that data someplace that you could use in an application. So it's almost impossible. The thing that's really stood out to me with this, and I'm not talking about like private data or like customer data or anything, but if I think about, I've gotten way back into my baseball card collection from when I was a kid. And there are things about a baseball card collection. There's a ton of data there, right? There's the individual cards, how many there are, what the number and name of each player is for each card. There's all the statistics on the back and the text and all that. There's the picture. All of that could be data in some API someplace that I could call and consume and interact with. But it doesn't exist. And I think about all the things that I could build if I just had access to that data. And then I think about all the other things that are out there, lists of products and library books and whatever. Like, you can't easily find a reliable collection of all the things, whatever the thing might be. And I just, part of what I think is for voice to succeed is for that kind of democratization of data, where people are, every company has a feed that shares out their list of products, whatever they have. It's not for the purpose of selling. It's for the purpose of allowing people to compose their own stuff to be able to make it new and interesting, right? I want to take some information from company A and B and C, and now I have this really interesting story to tell about how I can compose them together. And I'm still using your data and it's talking about your products or whatever it is. But I feel like there's something there that needs to happen. But there's no incentive for the companies because there's no profit in that necessarily. If anything, there's maybe costs. And it's like a lot of that stuff feels like they want to keep it proprietary, right? Like, we want to own that. Well, that's fine. But I feel like if everybody had access to it, they would do cool things with it, which would only help you. Anyway, the point I was getting to is that if I had access to all the data, like it seems R2 and C3PO often have, they seem to have a lot of knowledge about things and history and what's going on. I think it would be really compelling to then say, hey, all of you assistants need to be able to talk. You need to be able to share data. You need to be able to compose ideas together so that when I talk, and again, we're not talking about using names or anything. It's just, what is this thing? Or what is the name of that? The nearest assistant can answer and say, actually, I don't know, but Alexa seems to know. Here's Alexa. Those kinds of things I think would be incredibly helpful. And if we think about like where automobiles are heading, right? It seems like a lot of automobile manufacturers want to have their own assistant in the car, which makes total sense, right? You want to talk to that brand. I'm a BMW driver or a Jeep driver or whatever.
Right.
I imagine there's like a really rugged, like sergeant voice for the Jeep car. And for BMW, it probably sounds like somebody from the Bay. I don't know. Right? He's gonna make sure you get in on some Bitcoin or something before you're done. I don't know.
Right.
Stereotype for BMW. But that feels like a thing to me. But they have to be aware of each other, and they have to be able to know who can do what. In the same way that, like, if you think about just a standard Google search, it's telling you, by the way, the answer you need is one of these first 5 things, probably. But I don't know the answers. These websites know the answers. That's all they're really doing, right? It's the same idea with voice is, well, Alexa seems to have the best likelihood of knowing this answer, so I'm going to hand you off to Alexa instead. So I think that's an interesting future.
It also goes back to just remembering that we can work all day on code, and we can work all day on an infrastructure, and we can work all day on like being really clever in our design, but the user 100% does not care. The The user just wants to access information that they're looking for at that moment in time. And they don't care how clever you've been behind the scenes,
Yes.
Unless what you've created doesn't work. And then it just angers them. But
And
I always
then
try
they
to
care very much.
What'd you say?
I said then they care very much when it doesn't work.
Yes. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What is the point of this device? Why do I even have this?
Right.
So going back to a point you made earlier when you were taking a poll of your friends and family, and a lot of them said, I don't want it listening to me all the time. There's always that snarky response that us in the industry can say, like, you have a phone in your pocket that's probably listening to you all the time, right?
And knows where you are and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way more intrusive than anything you're going to get from an assistant like this. But it is interesting because you kind of break that functionality off and you designate it like this specific device does that specific thing. Then it's like, ooh, I don't know if I want that. But when I have a device that also serves all the utility that I have in a phone, I mean, anymore, I don't know what I would do without a phone.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well, yeah, it also has a microphone, but I don't care. Right? Like that.
Right.
It becomes a little easier to manage.
I've tried not to give that response to folks when they're like, oh, I don't trust, because it does sound kind of snarky. But I mean, sometimes I do just like hold up my phone and I'm like,
right, microphone. Right. That you don't have a visual indication of when it's listening and when it's not listening. And
right.
I mean, there is a reason that people have stories all the time, and you've probably encountered this, where I'll have a conversation with my wife about going on a vacation someplace, like, hey, it'd be cool, let's go to the Caribbean or let's do this, and then magically there are ads.
Yeah.
Magically. I wonder how that happened. But I like to think, being on the inside with Amazon and having access to the Alexa team and asking the right questions, I'm very confident that they're not doing that, right? I have all these red lights on because I know they're muted and I know that they're not listening, but I can't say the same about my phone. And I'm not picking on a specific phone manufacturer. I think that's just the nature of the device.
Yeah.
There isn't a hard microphone switch that you can just turn off.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Although maybe someday.
Yeah, that's true, because the smart speakers, all of them just have you just press a little button and then it's very easy to find. And,
it is. Yeah. But your phone doesn't have that.
No.
Very interesting. So let's take a step beyond that. So you talked a little bit about what you think the next 5 to 10 years look like. What does the next year look like, if you can share, for Matchbox? Do you guys have anything new that you're cooking up that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So immediately, in the immediate future, we are localizing content for India.
Oh, nice.
Because we have all of our skills that are in English are in India, but as our users have told us, it is not localized for. There's a lot of shared history between the United States and the United Kingdom. There's a lot of shared history and culture, also with Canada and with Australia. But we can't assume that folks outside of those countries are aware of the shared history and culture.
Sure.
Right? So we really do have to localize our content. So we're working on that now. We have, like I mentioned earlier, we have interpreters and translators that help us with localizing our content for Mexico and Spain and Brazil and France. And they're really great. They don't just translate, they interpret the content.
Yeah, so, you need that for sure.
Yeah.
And I would imagine even with like a trivia scenario, there's probably questions that are appropriate to ask Western culture.
Yes.
That might hit differently in India, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and also with Brazil, because Brazil doesn't, their history is very different than obviously the United States and the United Kingdom. So I really rely on my content folks to help me with that, to help us interpret. And they tell me, Sarah, this is not going to work. You cannot use this. Right. People will have no idea what you're talking about there. But we recognize that we have kind of been doing a disservice to our users in India. So that's what I'm working on, like literally in these next couple of weeks. That's
great. And so is it specific skills or is it all of them? How are you focusing?
We're going to start with question of the day, and then we're going to branch out from there. So so we just need to find that just need to find someone who really wants to help people learn more about the world, because that's how we approach most of our content.
Yeah.
Like we want to help the user like start with what they feel comfortable with, and then help them expand their knowledge of the world. We're looking for someone who can help us from an educational standpoint with that. And also, we just launched a mobile app, which I'm so excited about, that links with your Amazon Alexa account. So if you're playing question of the day, and eventually we'll add more skills to it. If you're playing question of the day on your smart speaker, but you know you're going to be traveling or you're not at home and you don't want to like lose your play streak, you can go to the mobile app and link your account and then play there. So we've really been working on that a lot. So
that's very cool. So this is an uncommon approach that you're taking, which is we built an Alexa skill first.
Yeah.
Now we're building a companion mobile app.
Yeah, it's kind of backwards, right?
It is a little backwards. I mean, it's not bad. Backwards sometimes gets a negative connotation. It's the opposite direction.
Yeah.
More often than not, there's a mobile app and they're like, oh, we should add an Alexa skill.
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes when folks do that, they kind of dumb down the experience of what was on the mobile app and then trying to make an Alexa skill, or that's not their domain. They might be excellent mobile app developers, but they don't know how to transfer that experience over. I've seen it. I mean, it can be done well. It just sometimes it's not done so well. So for us, we feel like we've been very successful in figuring out what users want on their smart speaker. So now diving into the mobile app world is it's a whole new market.
Yeah. Well, and it's so much more dependent on visuals. It's not that you can't have visuals with the Echo and stuff, but visuals in mobile are paramount, right? Like it's almost more important than the content sometimes. Like it has to look good and behave right. And
so we've had to, no, you're exactly right. We've had to really kind of think. Oh yeah, we did a lot of thinking and it was a lot of work putting it together.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Something I think that helped is really Amazon was really encouraging us to adopt APL. So once we went through that process first, and then we're like, okay, now we kind of figured out how this might look, and so then we were able to start thinking more about the mobile app.
Cool. Is that the first mobile app you've worked on?
Yes, it's a whole new world.
Okay. Follow-up question. Is it the last mobile app you've worked on?
I don't know.
Some people love it. Some people are like, I don't know that I need to do that again.
Yeah. Well, so we kind of built this particular one in that you can add additional experiences within the one mobile app. So we might have question of the day on there now, but eventually we could also have other experiences on there.
Right.
So it might not be a new app that we create in the future. It's just additional components to the existing one.
Oh, very cool. Okay. And what's the name of the app if people want to find it?
So it's under two names, Question of the Day and Socratics. So
Socratics.
It's like Socratics with an X on the end.
Okay. And is it depending on the store, or is it in both names in the same store?
It's in both names. Right now it's Question of the Day Socratics because there's a few Question of the Day apps. And eventually we're going to switch that so that it's Socratics.
Got it. And is that just a play on the word Socrates, or what's the word there? Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Good catch.
Very, very cool.
So Socrates, right, was known for asking questions of his students to help guide them in their education. And that's kind of what we do. We ask questions.
Yeah. No, I like that. You mentioned earlier about your trivia game and how you kind of have these nuggets that come out afterward that are a bit educational. After they get the question right or wrong, you share with them some knowledge and kind of teach. And that's something that I do also with my questions. It's one of my favorite parts actually of the entire experience is that, yes, you got the question right or wrong, but whether or not you got it right or wrong, I'm going to give you a little nugget that you may not have known about that thing. And I think that takes it a lot further. It's cool. Yeah,
it's just adding value to the user, that it's not just a quick, did you get it right or wrong? And then we're going to move on to the next question quick. And there's value in having that as well. Some people want that experience, but we want users to I don't know, have a more comprehensive experience, and also to feel good if they get the question wrong. like, that sucks. I totally get it. I hate getting things wrong. But we want you to like have a positive experience, and like, it's okay if you got it wrong, but here's something here. We're going to help you learn more about the subject.
Yep. No, I think that's great. All right. So as we head towards the end of this wonderful interview, and I'm so glad I got a chance to talk with you today.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I can help you share with our community about what you guys are working on or where they can find you? What's the best place to dig into Matchbox?
Yeah. So our entire portfolio is on Amazon Alexa. So you can find us in the skill store if you just search for matchbox.io. You can also just go to our website, matchbox.io, and we have, our entire portfolio there. Check out our mobile app, Socratics, question of the day. And we also have we've extended the learning from smart speaker and mobile app to also a website, askqotd.com. We have brand new articles every single day that expand on that day's topic. So we had a question about the first African-American woman in space a couple days ago, and her name is Mae Jemison, who was on Star Trek Next Generation. She played a character on there, but she was the first African-American woman astronaut with NASA. So you learn more about her on your smart speaker, but then you can also go to askqotd.com and read a whole article that has her bio and her photo, and you can learn more there.
Very cool. I was digging into my box of awesomeness over here. I thought I had. Oh, I do. So I run a software development conference every year. It's called Stir Trek. It sounds a lot like a movie franchise you may have heard of. And this year, 2020 was going to be, we hold it in a movie theater, and it's held on the day that a big movie opens. And so we've always kind of tied ourselves to like Marvel movies and stuff because they're fun, they're kind of geeky friendly and whatever. And so because it was Black Widow, we thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about women in technology and science and stuff. And so we made this awesome collection. I don't know how well I can show them, but they're stickers, and they're all famous women. So like everybody's heard of Grace Hopper.
Love it.
I can do that. So we made a Grace Hopper sticker. I have Katherine Johnson, who was one of the women from the lunar calculations. What was that? Was it a movie called Numbers?
I know what you're talking about.
But I thought, I guess I'm wrong. We only went with computing, but I thought we had Mae Jemison in this collection, which was making me think of that. But you've probably seen this photo of Margaret Hamilton. We made a image of her too. Hidden Figures. That was the name of the movie.
That's what it is. Yeah.
But so we made this whole collection of stickers for women from the early days of computer science and historical figures that were female in the computer science history, and it was really cool to do. And I'm trying to think of how I have a parallel with Mae Jemison now, because that has come up in my life recently where I know what it was. 2019, we ran an event here at Amazon called REMARS.
Yeah.
And at REMARS, the MARS part stands for Machine Learning, Automation, Robotics, and Space. And for the space part, for 2019, I was responsible for all of the content. So there was 90 something sessions, and I got roped into being the one that got to decide what all the sessions were and putting all that together. And so I actually I had a conversation with Mae and her team about coming to be a speaker there. And I was just, it was so cool to be able to have a conversation with somebody that had been in space. I met John Glenn when I was very young, but to be able to talk with her and just like get her thoughts on what she thought she'd talk about and what would be interesting. It was mind-blowingly cool.
I'm sure.
Super nice lady.
So I just, one of our users just mentioned on our Facebook page that a high school near her is named the Mae Jemison High School in Alabama.
Nice.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Right. Especially in Alabama, where you wouldn't think that would be too well received. That's fantastic.
I was a little surprised by that, to be honest.
Right.
Surprised. Yeah.
Anyway, this has been wonderful, Sarah. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk today. Yeah. And I don't see a ton of questions in the chat. Normally, if there's any questions, I'll kind of wrap up with some of those. Mm-hmm. But it has been absolutely my pleasure, and I'm so glad we got a chance to meet like this. Hopefully, once all this pandemic stuff is over, we'll get to say hi in person.
Yeah.
Maybe one of those fantastic photos behind you there.
Yeah. No, I can't wait for all the conferences to start back up and for all of us to get to chat in person and learn from each other in person. And,
yes. It's going to be wonderful. Maybe 2022.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Yes. All right.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. It was great to talk with you.
It was. Thank you so much. I'm going to sign off. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This will be available on YouTube and on Twitch as an archive in case you want to catch up with it later. But thank you guys all so much for tuning in. We will be here every week. We'll have another great guest next week. But Sarah, thank you again so much for being here.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Bye.